It's going down. Shalom. First and foremost, giving all praises, honor, glory, respect, and blessings to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem Rachakwadash. Salutations to the Lord's elect on the four corners of the earth, pushing this truth and sincerity while patiently waiting for Yahweh Shai's return. And double honors to our apostles and elders of Great Millstone, which have taught us everything we know through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai. And welcome to another series of It's Going Down, being brought to you by the spirit and power of Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai. Protesters storm president's residence. So it says here, one moment. So it says here that thousands are demanding the resignation of Sri Lankan President Gotabaya Rajapaksa amid the worst economic crisis since 1948. So because of this worst economic crisis since 1948, people are storming the president's residence, demanding his resignation. Okay? And you know, these protesters, they're at unrest right now. There is civil unrest that is currently going on in Sri Lanka, if I'm saying that correctly. Lanka or Lakan, Sri Lankan. Okay, there's civil unrest going on, economy destabilization. People are sitting on the edge of their seats all over the world, but it's mainly because the wicked, so-called elites, are in rulership. We must always remember, when we see protests like this taking place in a country, you always got to consider the possibility that the so-called elites, through the Illuminati, by this government in Sri Lankan, is responsible for this economic crisis. Because remember, they have an agenda, NWO, where they want people to come to their government for a solution, so the so-called elites, through the Illuminati, by that government, can come with the answers, which those answers are only going to draw a country more closer to their NWO agenda. That's what their answer is going to be. It's going to draw their country more closer to the NWO agenda. Sri Lankan President Gotabaya, he's really just a puppet. Rajapaksa has reportedly had to flee his residence in the capital, Colombo, as thousands of protesters encircled the compound demanding his resignation. A local source told AFP on Saturday that the head of state was escorted to safety, with troops firing warning shots to keep protesters at bay. According to Reuters, which cited defense ministry sources, Rajapaksa had already been whisked off to another location on Friday ahead of the planned rally over the weekend. Attempts by security forces to prevent demonstrators from entering the presidential residence have apparently failed, an eyewitness told the media outlet. Footage published by local TV channel News first showed protesters with Sri Lankan flags in their hands, forcing their way into the compound. A Facebook live stream from inside the residence also depicted demonstrators overrunning the building. And what you see right here is a video from Sri Lankan and their breach through multiple barriers in order to get into the president's house. So it's just mass chaos down there, you know. It says a 100,000 strong crowd is believed to have amassed around the presidential residence amid the country's worst economic crisis since 1948. According to the media reports, 33 people have been injured so far, with 2 protesters reportedly in critical condition. So there could have been, I don't know, maybe a couple of shots were fired and some of the protesters were struck. Who knows, you know? But now if we come over here, because what we just read in this article and what we just saw in that video lines up with biblical prophecy. Second Esdras chapter 15 verse 15. Okay, it says, for the sword and their destruction draweth nigh, and one people shall stand up and fight against another, and swords in their hands. Okay, now first and foremost, this is talking about race wars. Okay, the nation of Israel, which are the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native Indians, versus the nation of Edom. Okay, which are the so-called elites trickling down to the rest of their nation of people, so-called white people. But this is also talking about civil war, where the one people is talking about the civilians, and the ones they shall stand up and fight against another are these different martial law troops, which operate on the behalf of the government, which people clearly will not care about in the last days. Second Esdras chapter 15 verse 16. It says, for there shall be sedition among men. When you look up the word sedition, it literally means an uprise or a rebellion against the government. And that's exactly what we saw in this news article here. We've seen people storming a major governmental building known as the presidential residence, demanding people to resign. You know, demanding the president to resign, as I meant to say. For there shall be sedition, a rebellion against the government among men, and invading one another. Okay, didn't they not breach into the presidential residence demanding a resignation? They shall not regard their kings. Your modern day kings today will be who? Your presidents. So these people, they're not regarding their president. They don't care what he got to say. They just want him out of office because of the worst economic crisis that they are currently going through since 1948. It says, they shall not regard their kings nor princes, and of course their actions shall stand in their power. And that's what we're seeing here. These protesters these protesters have taken over the presidential residence building. Okay, so the course of their actions are standing and their power. Now let's go to verse 17. It says, a man shall desire to go into a city and shall not be able. Why? Because it's going to be martial law in that day. It's going to be martial law. So, they're going to want to go into a different city. And it's not going to just be Sri Lanka or Sri Lankan that's going to be under martial law. It's going to be many different countries under martial law. America being one of them. Europe being one of them. Even Russia and parts of the Middle East. It's going to be under martial law, where there's going to be martial law troops blocking your exits as well as your entrances into other cities. And the only way you can get into another city is if you have a particular pass. Okay, they're going to have curfews set up. They're going to have checkpoints set up. Okay, they're going to have biometric facial scanners set up. And it's going to be all martial law. So with that, I'm going to say, Shalom is on to the next one.